Think of a time in your life when you were happy. Happy, 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 happy. Think of a time in your life when you were happy. You have a time?
Yeah.
Tell me. What?
Many.
You have many times?
Yeah.
Tell me 4.
4? Okay, well, 4 birthdays.
What, you were happy on your birthday?
Yeah.
Why?
Nice day.
Nice day.
4 years have been nice.
Have you ever been happy before?
Sure.
Tell me. Tell me a time.
I'm very happy recently. I passed a big exam at my mature age, a professional exam, and to have achieved that from, having made it a goal some years ago was the day I got the result that I passed was.
Made you happy.
Right.
You were very happy.
Cried with happiness as I was driving the car and I got the email saying.
Nice. So you were checking your email and you were driving.
The traffic lights. You know,
Yeah, sure, right. Officer, I promised, there was a traffic light. Where? He's like, okay, have you been happy before?
Yeah.
Yeah? Have you been happy before?
Sure.
Don't tell me, just do you have a time you can think of?
Yeah.
Okay, have you been happy? Do you have a time?
Yeah.
Yeah, you?
Yeah.
You got a time? Happy? Happy? There's a smile. Okay. No, I mean just happy. Have you been happy before? Sometimes. I like that one. That was honest. The rest of you are like, yes. Promise. Okay, so y'all been happy before. If you don't mind, could you please give me a definition of happiness? Go. As I suspected.
To feel positive about surroundings and inner feelings. Maybe.
Sounds good.
Blissful joy.
That was such a cop-out. Yeah, just come up with other words that sound like happiness. Yeah, bliss, joy. Give me something else. What's the definition of happiness?
Being ecstatic.
Oh, stop
Feelings
it.
of ecstasy.
Adjectives. These are adjectives. Don't give me adjectives. Tell me what the definition of happiness is. You've all been happy, right? So, what's the definition?
It's good to be alive. To be alive. I'm really. This is a nice feeling of that it's worth being here right now and experiencing this moment.
You might be right. What you just said might be true. I don't know if that's the definition of happiness, though.
But it's defining how that emotion feels in terms of.
Okay.
You take that to the next level. Not just saying I feel happy, but I feel happy. Therefore, I'm glad that I'm here experiencing.
Right. So the therefore is not okay because therefore is a therefore, right? But you started by saying emotion. That was good. Right? In other words, give me a definition of happiness and emotion. That's true. Yeah, give me a definition.
The satisfaction of achieving something that matters to you.
Oh, that was good. I like that. Let's understand. You might be right, but you might not be. Now let's take a look. Happiness. Happine. 2 S's or 1? You sure? Okay. So happiness. Say it again, please.
The satisfaction of achieving something that's important to you.
The satisfaction of achieving something which is important to you. Okay, that's very good. I like how you just said that. That could be happiness, but that might also be what we call, that also might be happiness. With only 1 S. Now what I mean by that is that there is happiness, which is the top level, and then there's a level below happiness, which is called happiness. Yeah? Now what you said might fit into both, it might only fit into 1. Okay, let's take a look. You got a definition? Hit it.
I think the emotional state of a human being without his conscience hurting him.
So there's a natural state of man. Natural state of man is happiness.
I think so without his conscience burning at him or in any way, shape, or form, nervousness, guilt.
But that's complicated now because how do you duplicate it? Just get rid of your conscience? You know that can cause you to murder also.
No, I mean, fix your.
You mean negative conscience.
Yeah, people don't have positive conscience. People aren't disturbed by the positive things that they do. And if they're disturbed when they didn't do positive things, people want to grow. So they're going to be disturbed. So they're keeping that back in.
So help me. I want to be happy. What should I do?
You're
Okay, anyone else want to give a definition?
That I know.
Yeah, no, that's the best. The best is if you're from you.
For nothing,
Say again?
wanting for nothing.
Wanting for nothing. That's interesting. Right, the Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos, Ezehu Ashir, Samech Bechalko. Who is someone who's rich, someone who's happy with what they have. Right, so therefore you don't want for anything. Right? That's along the lines. You don't want for anything. In other words, you realize that you have everything. There's no need for anything else. Okay, I'm going to give you another definition. Yeah, you want to go for it?
Gandhi one,
Go for it.
when happiness is when what you think, what you say, and what you do are all aligned.
Nice. That's cute. Okay, true, but it still might be the level below. And I'll explain to what I mean. Ready to go? Here we go. Happiness is the feeling, it's an emotion, right, that one gets when they are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Now, what I wanted to say, which is very similar to what you're saying, is just it's called meaningful accomplishment. But meaningful accomplishment, the way that you described it, was more of coming from the person as opposed to an objective thing. It was more of a subjective thing. How you feel, right, when something is important to you. But let's say something that isn't necessarily important to you. Now, if you meant important to you because it's important to objectively, great. That's why I said, I don't know what you meant. In which case, it might be both, it might only be one. What's the difference between the two? Ultimately, we'll find out in the next world. What I mean by that is there an objective thing called happiness, and is there an objective right or wrong? So Judaism would state that there is an objective right or wrong. There's something called God, and God would put forth what's considered the objective right and wrong, what we should and should not be doing. When you fall in line in doing with that which you're supposed to be doing, you feel unbelievably happy. Now, don't make a mistake. Happiness and pleasure don't have to come together at all. Right? We understand that, yeah? For example, can a person be unfaithful? Can a person be unfaithful with their spouse and have pleasure? Yes, yes or no?
Yes, in that moment that they're being unfaithful, they may feel at that particular moment they're experiencing pleasure.
Could it be that they're miserable, though? At the same time that they're experiencing pleasure. Right? So let's just make this clear, that pleasure doesn't necessitate happiness. Is that good? Now, why am I saying this? Nobody happened to have fallen into the trap of saying that. But that doesn't mean we don't necessarily think that or live that. As a matter of fact, most people are going for the ultimate. When they want happiness, they go to buy things that will make them feel pleasurable. But ultimately, that doesn't bring happiness. That just brings pleasure. And that's nice. Pleasure is good. But there's a higher level. What you got?
So you were saying that it's doing something that you're supposed to be doing.
That's right.
I was thinking of something more along, that's very similar, but doing something that you love.
Doing something that you love.
Like, for example, I love skiing.
Okay.
When I'm skiing, I'm happy. They're synonymous.
Okay, good. Let's try to understand something. Let's say you were to wake up one morning and realize that skiing is a waste of time.
Right.
How would you feel?
I would feel like that's subjective because...
You.
Oh, that...
You.
I
If
mean,
you were to wake
it's not
up,
a waste of time. How's it a
that's
waste of time?
that's correct. That's how you feel now. But let's say you were to wake up and find out it's a waste of time. How would you feel? I know it can't be, but if it were.
Who's to define it as a waste of time?
Great question. But let's say whoever was to define it, i.e. you,
Then I would say I want to waste of time for the rest of my life.
okay, that's because right now you don't really feel it's a waste of time. You're still living in the fact that it's not a waste of time. Is there anything in your life that you did that you now feel is a waste of time, therefore you don't do? Did you ever used to play with puzzles when you were younger? Did you ever build blocks?
Yeah?
Do you still build blocks?
No, not currently.
Why not? You're really good at it.
I don't have any blocks to build.
Oh, that's the reason? I'll get you some blocks. Yeah?
I'll build them.
The reason why you don't build blocks is because you think it's a waste of time. When you were 3 or 17, right, so maybe it wasn't a waste of time. But now it's a waste of time. So therefore, you stop doing it. Do you get that? Now, as long as you don't realize it's a waste of time, you're fine doing it. And you know what? When you think back to when you were 3, you don't feel it was a waste of time when you were 3. Even now, you probably look back and say, that's what 3-year-olds do. So it's not a waste of time, right? But what if I were to tell you that you sat there doing this, just ripping papers, until the age of 12, yeah? And there's nothing wrong with you, right? You just happen to do that. And then at 13, you're like, what am I doing? You probably, A, would stop doing it. And B, you might have thoughts at some point in time, why did I waste so much time ripping papers? Does that make sense? Yes. Now, you don't ever think back to think, oh no, I wasted so much time coloring, right, when you were 3 or 4. I wasted so much time putting stickers, right? You didn't think that either because that's normal, right? That's what you do. You didn't think you wasted so much time crawling, right? Because that's part of it, right? But if it's something that you realize was really nothingness, like I don't know, something else, yeah? So I wanted to use a different example, but you might fall into this category unless that's natural. And that's called working out. Let's say a person thinks working out, a person loves to work out. Yeah, they love not being able to fit through doors, walking straight. They have to turn sideways, yeah? They love not being able to sleep because every time they turn, they can't move, right? But then you wake up one day and you realize it's idolatry, that it's a waste of time. Now, why would I say it's idolatry? Because essentially you're worshiping your body. No, I'm doing it for health. Nobody lifts weights for health. If you're doing it for health, then you swim, right? Or you do the elliptical. Nobody goes, my doctor said I have to watch my health. Let's go, push it, come on, right? Nobody does it, you understand? Problem is you do, right, what's it called, the whole body, when you swim, what kind of workout is that? Cardiovascular, right? Cardiovascular and those type of things. So the point is working out. If a person works out like crazy, they put all their time into working out, something they love, but then they wake up one day and they realize that it's a waste of time. How will they feel about the fact that they did it? Your mind, your heart, your soul, your body, everything all lines up. But then you recognize it's all wrong. It all lined up, but it was wrong. So if you're lining up, but it's all wrong, so wonderful. And you know what? Every one of us has lined up many things in our lives that we now recognize we shouldn't have done, or that isn't worthwhile for us, which essentially means you shouldn't have done. Are we all in the same? Does this make sense? Every one of us have put a lot of effort and time and effort into things in our lives. Yeah, what you got?
But at the same time, maybe somebody needs to work out until a certain degree until he realizes, so maybe not a waste of time.
Could be. If that is true, then it's true. I'm not going to argue with that, right? In other words, yeah, if somebody needed that in order to whatever, then yeah, then it wasn't a waste of time. But what if I were to tell you that, hey, let's talk about this beforehand, then I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that, actually. I want to retract my agreement.
Like talking before somebody starts doing it so he understands, maybe that's better. But sometimes we don't know it or we don't see it or we just don't understand it.
So that's just a reality. That doesn't mean... You're speaking out a reality that if your parents explain to you that you shouldn't do certain things, right, in life, but you go, let me make my own mistakes, I hate you, like those type of things, and then the kid needs to make the mistake in order to realize it, that's unfortunate. You just have to be pointing out a reality that maybe you need to go through something in order to get there. You're right, maybe you too, but that's sad, right? Imagine your parents tell you not to do something. You're like, I know better, and then you do it, and then afterwards you realize that they were right, yeah? Wouldn't you want to go back and not have to have done that in the first place? So it's an unfortunate reality. You had to go through that in order to get that education. But if you could have been educated more properly beforehand, then you would have rather been educated more properly beforehand. I did that for you, yeah.
I'd say experience is the best teacher, though, so
yeah, sure.
It's almost...
Is it possible to get education without that?
Things that I just ignored, and then later on it's like, oh, yeah, I see.
We're all, therefore, I'm not sure you're just throwing out an idea. 100% I agree with that idea. Is it possible to get education without experience and get real knowledge? What would you say? To an extent that you don't have to make a mistake.
Limited, but on how to live your life, not, I think you have to make the decision yourself.
Of course you have to make the decision yourself. Can you make mistakes can you stop yourself from making mistakes by watching other people making mistakes? In other words, according to you, do you have to become a crack addict, an alcoholic, anorexic, bulimic, and unbelievably fat?
Okay.
So then we're in agreement, right?
Yeah.
You could learn through experience that doesn't have to be personal experience, right? So the difference between what you're saying now and what I was maybe saying before is purely talking versus experience of seeing, visual, or friends, right?
Like society accepted thing.
Okay, whatever you want to call it, right? But the end of the day is that when you go out and you experience it yourself, for sure, a person who experiences heart disease will understand heart disease more than somebody who just learns about it or even sees someone with it. But I think I'm going to get the message from seeing somebody with the heart disease. I'd rather at least get that message, right, than rather have to get it myself. Yeah? That's right.
It's still a sad reality.
That's right. That's what I was trying to point out over here. That even if this is the case, it's b'diavad, right? This is not what we're looking for. Yeah.
At the same time, like you're right, and like in a perfect
I like that, thank you.
Everybody would learn, but the world is not set up like this. There are just people who are.
So that's a sad reality.
Okay.
No, said. Now you start a good. Now it's you. You give it a price. It's said. No, it's how it is.
Well, let me ask you a question. Okay? A person has a relative, let's say, and that relative gets hooked on cocaine and heroin. And then they get out of it, but they have a lifelong struggle with it because it's a massive addiction. Would you say that's just what it is? Or would you say that's unfortunate?
No, of course it's bad.
That's it. That's all he said. That's all he said. All he said is it's sad that it has to come to this. You're saying it's not sad, it's just what it is. No, you're agreeing. That's sad. But the reality, he's saying it's sad and it is what it is. And you're saying, no, it's just what it is. But now you're agreeing, it's sad also. It's unfortunate that it has to be that we have to go through pain, and we have to experience these unfortunate realities in order to get somewhere.
No, I'm saying the world is not set up like this. No, of course you're right what you said, but I'm saying we don't have to do decisions. We can do like this, and tomorrow everybody's perfectly educated. It's not how the world is.
Correct.
Also that it's said, yes.
Fine, good. So then we're just getting caught up in philosophy of semantics, right? But the bottom line is what's coming out of this is the idea that if we want to be happy, and everyone wants to be happy, then we have to learn what's the formula to be happy. What's the formula? Formula is let's figure out, is there something objective out there? You can agree or disagree all you like. This is totally up to your prerogative. I'm going to give you a Jewish perspective, and you could take it or leave it. Take it or leave it. The Jewish perspective is that a person has the ability to be unbelievably happy at every moment of his life. How so? Now, happiness, don't confuse. There was once a woman who seemed to be quite miserable. She wasn't smiling, and somebody asked her, "Why aren't you happy?" And the woman said, "What does smiling have to do with happiness?" And I think it's a brilliant idea, because so many times you see, oh, someone's smiling, they're happy. Someone's not smiling, they're miserable. Tell me, do we know people that smile that are depressed? Do we know anyone that smiles that's depressed? Right? I think you know a little bit too much about this, right? Answer is what? That's sure. There are plenty of people. I don't want to give numbers, but yes, there are people out there that are smiling that are depressed. And there are people out there that aren't smiling. And you know what? They're not depressed, they're thrilled. Happens to be that a physical manifestation often of happiness will be a smile because of the release of the chemicals in the brain and the dopamine that goes down into the idea of what it causes a person to physically smile. But that's not that's not what we're talking about here. A person can be, I'll give you an example of working out. I saw this Rabbi Tatz gives a great example. Gives an example that a person, you guys are from England, right? So, well, oh, you know Rabbi Tatz. Yeah, I wasn't going that way, but let's say. Now, you're probably familiar, let's say in England there's no gyms. Okay, gymnasiums, okay. Let's say there are no gyms. So you come to New York and you see a big sign that says gym. You're like, let me check it out, right? Now, let's say you don't know how to read. Yeah. Okay. So you go to this gym and you see, you want to check out what it is. So you walk over, but it's all milky glass. You can't see in for tznius purposes, okay? So you walk over and you like look through the keyhole, right? And then you realize, this isn't the 1900s. You can't see through keyholes anymore, right? So what happens, we kind of find a crack in the thing, and you look through, and you see that there's a guy lying down on this bench, and there's a metal bar on his neck. And you're like, oh my goodness, they're torturing this guy. So you're like, I'm going to take care of this. If it was kung fu fighting, bam, you kick that door open. You run in, and you find the guy's lying there on this bench, and he's got the metal thing. You're like, oh my gosh, they left him here to die. There's no one here. It's just these massive metal rings on the side of this bar. This guy is sweating. Clearly he's in pain. And you start to pick up the bar. And he's like, what are you doing? And he like pulls it down. And you're like lifting it up. You're like, ah. And he's like, what are you doing? You're like, you'll thank me later. Right? And finally you get it up. You're like, oh, are you okay? He's like, am I okay? What are you doing? And you're thinking like, what do you mean? I just saved your life. It's just like, saved my life. What are you talking about? I want this. You're like, you want this? He's like, yeah, I pay for this. You're like, you pay for this? I don't know what goes on in America, right? One of the many things you could chalk up to craziness, yeah? But what's the reality of that guy when he's lifting those weights? How does he feel? How does he feel while he's lifting those weights?
Well, he might be happy. He might be happy once he's got the weight up.
Okay.
But
When you're working out and you get home, you go, yeah. You see those people when they're working out? The pain is the pleasure. Yeah, they're like, no pain, no gain, blah, 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 giving them a Slim Jim, right? They love it, right? They love it. You know, they can't get even more of it. The more pain, the better, you understand? But does it look like that on their face? On their face, it looks like they're going through terrible misery. But how are they feeling inside? They're feeling joy to the world, to all the boys and girls. Joy to the fishes in the deep blue sea. Joy to you and me, yeah? Jeremiah was a bullfrog. Idea is one, he feels unbelievably joy. But hold on, doesn't look okay, so that's number one. To recognize that smiling doesn't have anything to do necessarily with happiness. And neither does any sort of pleasure. So Judaism comes along and states that there is an objective concept. There's an objective reality. There's two different ideas. And we actually see, why am I bringing this up? In this week's Torah portion, there's a whole interesting, it's not so nice, but in chapter 28, verse 4 to 7, not quote, this is after a long list of curses that God says might befall the Jewish people, that if you go through Jewish history, you found did befall the Jewish people. Terrible, terrible things. Read it yourself. So after this long list of curses, the Torah says, you know why you got all these curses? It says the reason you got all these curses is tachas asher lo avadata as Hashem Elokecha besimcha uvetuv levav merov kol. Because of the fact that you didn't serve Hashem your God with happiness and with gladness of heart when things are going good. You didn't serve God with happiness. Now, there's so many different commentaries on this that play off this verse. Like, what's it saying? It doesn't seem to be saying that you didn't serve God. It says you served God. But you didn't serve God with happiness. God, what do you want from me? Yeah? You want to put on tefillin? I'll put on tefillin. Yeah, you want me to light Shabbos candles? Okay. You want me to keep purity laws of family purity? Okay, I'm doing what you want me to do. Like, what's with the happiness bit? Because you didn't serve God with happiness. So how does one serve God with happiness? So like we said before, think back to any time in your life. The reason why you were happy when you got that mark and you passed that test is because you gave meaning to that test. That test is meaningful to you. Since it's meaningful to you, you have accomplished something meaningful. Now you have happiness. But what if you were to find out tomorrow that passing that test doesn't get you anywhere in your business, doesn't get you anywhere in your life, it really doesn't help you at all? Would you feel happy?
I feel disappointed.
You'd feel disappointed, right? It would be quite the opposite of happiness. That feeling, those tears of joy would turn into other tears, yeah? If you put a puzzle together, a 4-piece puzzle, you have accomplished. Is it meaningful accomplishment? No. If you pass a test, you have accomplished. But if it's not meaningful, it doesn't matter. People, if you climb Mount Everest, you feel happy because you've accomplished, but that is such a subjective accomplishment. What happens if everybody climbed Everest? Would you feel so accomplished anymore? If you were the first one. But if everybody did everybody, so what? Today, I want to tell you something, I walked 15 minutes to get here. No, I'm serious. I know, thank you, I know. Who cares? So what? When you ascribe meaning, and that's the lower level. The lower level is happiness is the feeling that one gets when they're doing what they think they should be doing, when they think it's the right thing, when they think it's what they're supposed to be involved with. So let's say you got a pamphlet. It's a pamphlet, it's about a camp. It's called the WKJ Camp of America, where boys and girls grow to be men and women. Lovely, lovely. So you know, let's check it out. You like to help out, so you donate money. Don't you feel good? You help boys and girls become men and women. Isn't that amazing? Great feeling. Okay, after you donate, you're sitting down one day and you're bored, so you're actually reading the pamphlet. You never really read it. And you read the subtitle. It says WKJ Camp of America. That stands for the We Kill Jews Camp of America. We make boys and girls men and women. How do you feel at that moment? You've gone quite the opposite of being happy. You're now depressed. What did I do? Imagine putting time and effort into something, spending so much time and effort in something, putting so much of your life into something and finding out it was all a waste of time. If it was that brought you to the next level, so great. But if it didn't bring you anywhere, that's just depression. Isn't it worthwhile to find out maybe what we should be doing in life? So Judaism states that the idea of what's happiness, the feeling that one gets when they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Now the next question is, well, how do you know what you're supposed to be doing? We're all out of time. Thank you for coming. Okay, well, let me give you some suggestions. How can a person figure out what they're supposed to be doing? Now, why is it, like we said before, that you got the curses? That we got the curses because we didn't serve God out of joy and happiness. But how can a person? You see, if you knew you're supposed to be doing something and you felt like this is the right thing to be doing, you would be thrilled to do it. A girl once asked me a question. She was sitting not by you, behind you, to the side a little. And she says to me, and she sends me messages during class. And she says to me, oh yeah, well how come I'm not so happy when I do kibud av va'im, when I respect my parents? Listen carefully. How come I'm not so happy when I do kibud av va'im, honoring their parents? So I said, what do you mean? I said, well, when my parents ask me to do something for them, I know it's the right thing, right? And if I know it's the right thing, and I'm doing the right thing, shouldn't I be happy? What's the answer? How come she's not happy?
She doesn't want to do it.
Why doesn't she want to do it?
She feels it's a chore.
Why does she feel it's a chore?
She's not as holy as someone who would do it for their parents because they gave them life.
Come on, people, why?
There's no meaning.
Say again?
There's no meaning.
Why is there no meaning?
Didn't give it to her.
Because she didn't give the meaning, because she doesn't see the meaning. Of course there's meaning. There's inherent meaning in every mitzvah that God gives us. But she doesn't recognize that it's really the right thing. She goes, I know it's the right thing. No, you don't. If you really thought it was the right thing, you'd be ecstatic to do it. You have to think about it in terms of if there's anyone that you look up to, if there's anyone that you idolize, right? I don't mean just your parents. I mean someone, like let's say Beatles style, right? Beatlemania. People love the Beatles, back in the day at least, yeah? So those people who love the Beatles, if John Lennon would come to you today, which would be impressive because he's dead, but if you were to come, and you'd be a crazy Beatles fan, and he would call you at 2 o'clock in the morning and say, can you get me a cup of water? What would a Beatles fan say? I'm so tired, let me do it tomorrow. They would jump out of bed. Right? They would jump out of bed, probably knock themselves out, hitting their head on something. They would, in their state of unconsciousness, say, get up. It's John. Get up. Right? They'd be like, get up. Hit their head again, and they might die. However, they'll run to do because they want to do. How much can I get for you? Jump how high, right? What do you want me to do for you? Because of course I know, because it's John, because I love this, because I recognize it. Hey, because they think it's what they're supposed to be doing. If God himself were to come to you and ask you to do something, and I'm asking everyone here, I know half of you are going to be like, how do I really know it's God? Okay, so then I'm not talking to you. But anyone else who could actually play this game, if God were to come to you right now and ask you to do something, do you think you would do it? Who thinks no? Okay, so I'm going to take that as yes. Yeah? Of course he would, right? Okay, so God did. He wrote us a book. It's called the Torah. How do I know it's true? Good question. Great question. Another class. For right now, we're saying that this is the book, this is the authored by God. So if God comes along and he writes a book, and in the book he writes mitzvos, and he says, do this. What's the difference? There is none. We make a difference. Say, oh, now it might not be him, right? But okay, but that's because we make it. Then we'd have to have a discussion to see. But if we were to come and actually see, let's say we were to come down to knowing that God is the author of this book, and he asked to keep it of aim, awesome, ecstatic. You just don't really believe that. If you really believed it, talking to this girl, if you really believed it, you'd be ecstatic to go and do it. Okay, so what's happiness? Happiness is the feeling one gets when they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. What happens? They go wake up and realize not what they're doing, what happens? Depression. Okay, so how does one know what they're supposed to be doing? So we got two missions. We have what's known as the whole Jewish people. The whole Jewish people have a mission. That's called the Torah. We got a book that we're given to us. And we got a mission we got to accomplish. And that's the idea of the Torah and the mitzvos. Now, it happens to be that the world we live in, there's a reason for this. It has to be set up this way. If it wasn't set up this way, then you wouldn't have any choice. If we've spoken in the past, you have so many people that say, oh yeah, well if there's a God, why doesn't he just show himself to me? Then I'll know. Then I'll follow. Baloney. You're not going to follow even then. But those who don't want to follow are not going to follow no matter what, because they're not going to want to follow. But if someone actually had saw clearly now, if the rain was gone, let's say, and you can see all obstacles in your way, let's say. Imagine, and that's exactly what it is. We're put in this world and we got obstacles that are put in front of us. If you could see clearly and you could see all the obstacles, would you trip over them? Hopefully not, yeah? The reality of seeing God B'chvodo v'atzmo. In other words, like we had the Jewish people back in the day that they experienced God himself, they didn't have any free choice. When you see God right in front of you, you don't have choice. But there had to be a time when God showed the whole Jewish people and gave them the ability of having choice to be able to see the fact that there's a God. As soon as God leaves, bam, right away you got your choice back again. And that's what happened, and they started using it pretty foolishly, and I'm not saying I would have done better. I'm just saying then what happened, we had all the problems of the desert, etc. But the idea is that the world is set up in a way that it has to be that there's obstacles, has to be that it's challenging. So now we have the Torah. And our avoda, our work that we have to do, is that, and this is why a lot of Hasidim will do this idea of hineni muchan muzuman. Not only Hasidim will do it, but it's prevalent amongst Hasidim, also Ashkenazim will do. Most people know that by Sfiras HaOmer, when they count the Omer, hineni muchan muzuman. Anyone? Hineni muchan muzuman. Hineni, not you're embarrassed? Muzuman the kayim.
I don't know the word, but I know the word.
Nine. Oh, nice, you did it. Kol hakavod. Right, so what happens is that hineni muchan muzuman l'kay mitzvah shekemo shekasuv b'Torah hineni muchan muzuman. Before we do a mitzvah, we stop and we think, I'm now preparing myself and getting ready to be able to do the following commandment. In other words, let me think about it. Let me get it in my mind. Let me recognize what this is, and then let me go do it. There's a difference between lighting Shabbos candles, or some light Shabbat candles, the same candles. Or they go ahead and they just do this, so, and they light it, or whatever it is, they light it. Or someone stops for a moment and thinks about what they're about to do. It changes the whole experience. This is like a chore. You just did what you had to do. Yotze, I fulfilled my obligation. This is like, wow, now I'm using it for some purpose. I could actually get somewhere with this, which we've discussed in the past for those who are with us and those who weren't. We didn't. That's not true, we did. You just weren't here. Okay, so it goes like this. Torah and mitzvos. Every Jew has an obligation to do Torah and mitzvos. Every Jew has an obligation to follow the Torah and to do the mitzvos. If we come along and recognize this is the objective, this is the not subjective, the objective right in this world. Derech HaTov L'Hitiv HaKadosh Baruch Hu came along and He gave us the Torah. The Torah is there for us to be able to only get goodness. That goodness comes through the idea of Torah and mitzvos. Now, like I said in the beginning, I've mentioned all along, you're totally welcome to argue with this or to question this or to go through this. I totally get that, and that's fine. But coming at the end game that Judaism states, whether that's true or not, I'll leave up to you to figure out. And by say, we'll go through it. However, this is what we do state, that ultimately you will be ecstatic to follow the mitzvos, assuming you understand that they're really from God. It only becomes a burden, it only becomes difficult, it only becomes a hardship when you think it's not from God, and when you don't have any connection and thought that it's coming from God. But like I said before, if God were to call you up or wake you up in the night or in the middle of the morning, whatever it is, and say, some of you in the morning, and go and say, X, Y, Z, you'd be 100%, thank you so much for coming to me, what an honor. Okay, that's the Torah. Then we have an individual mission. Every person has an individual mission of what they're supposed to be doing in this world. It doesn't have to be only one thing, there could be multiple things that we're doing. But then there's also specific things having to do with us as individuals, with our neshama. Every single person that is in this room right now, you are the only person, think carefully and internalize what I'm about to tell you, even without experience. You are the only person in this world that can do what you can do. This is not just a pep talk to make you feel good. For some of you it is, but for the rest it isn't. You are the only person that can do what your mission is. If someone else was able to do it, you wouldn't be here. What's that word when you have a part of a body or part of something which is unnecessary? Vestigial? No, vestigial is the word. Right, superfluous, extraneous is also redundant, but I was looking for that word. It's vestigial, right? There are no vestigial people in the world. Every single person that exists, you are here for a purpose. And if you weren't, then you wouldn't be here.
Do we all fulfill our purpose?
So everyone is here for a purpose. You have the opportunity to fulfill a purpose. Do you? I don't know. You tell me. If you don't, I don't know all the rules. It's either baby going down, 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 down somewhere, or you got to come back down and do your job again. It's likely that every one of us that are here today are a reincarnated soul of something that didn't finish the job. We got a job, we got a mission. So what is a mission? How does one figure it out? Join us next. Okay, so how does one figure out what it is? Okay, so it's obviously a process. Not so simple. But it's pretty simple. If I were to take you and drop you off at a work site, a construction site, is that what they call it in England? Construction site? What?
Building site.
A building site? Drop you off at a building site. And I say, you get out of the car. I'm like, okay, see you in 9 hours. And I drive off. I say, get to work. Assuming you're not just going to sit down and do nothing. And you're actually maybe going to get to work. What would you do? You got plumbing, electricity. You got mason work, tiles. You name it. You got it. It's half built. What would you work on? Assuming you could work on any part. In other words, that the order at this stage doesn't matter because all the infrastructure is in enough that you're allowed to do more. What would you start working on?
That means something to you.
So tell me, which part of the building means something to you?
Probably the inside.
Do you feel close to the inside? What do you mean? What would you do? Electricity? Plumbing?
Set up a foundation.
The foundation is half built, and right now you could hit either electricity, plumbing, or tiling. Which one are you going to do?
The best at.
Whatever you're best at, right? That makes sense, okay? Whatever you're best at. Now, you don't even know what this guy wants from you, but he just drops you off and says, get to work. What if he were to drop you off, not just with nothing, but he dropped you off with a toolbox? And he says, now get to work. What's the first thing you're going to do, hopefully?
See what tools you
Open the toolbox. You open the toolbox and you see that the first thing you see is a little screwdriver with a light bulb in the middle of it. Not like on it. In the middle of the actual screwdriver, there's a light bulb. Does anyone know what that is? Who said it? Very good. For what? Electricity, to see if there's a current flowing. You put it, you touch it to the wire, and if there's electricity, the light bulb lights up, assuming your light bulb works, otherwise you're in big trouble. And then you know to shut off the electricity before you start working, and then you check again to make sure it's off, because it might be you shut off the wrong fuse, and then you'll fry. You see there's that, then you see a bunch of wires, then you see a bunch of, so obviously you should be working on the plumbing, the electricity. Is that right? Take a look and see what's in your toolbox. Every individual in this room has specific talents and abilities and netios. You are drawn towards certain things for a reason. There's a reason. When you start touching your soul, you know the game Doctor with, there's like a board, maybe it's called Surgeon? Operation, right? Where like you have to touch the thing and like it'll light up the thing. I don't remember which is good. Is it good to light up or not good? Okay, now let's look at let's say it's good, okay? We have the game at home and I don't think we ever played it. And this is why, right? So that happens. You go ahead because I would lose every time. When you start to feel the light lighting up, your neshama is plugging in. Plug it in, plug it in. But don't get too caught up because sometimes you might feel pleasure. That doesn't mean you feel happiness. Did we get that? We have to be very careful the distinction between the pleasure and the happiness because you might be feeling great. You're on a diet and you're eating ice cream. It feels great. You're just also miserable. It's delicious. It's not like, no, it's not delicious because I'm on a diet. No, it's actually more delicious. Mayim genuvim mim taku, right? Stolen waters are sweeter. It's just the reality that what? That you're sad that you're doing it. So therefore, what does a person need to do? We need to start figuring out. That means we got to start thinking. Number one, we have our national and our individual. Our national mission, we got to see, is there a God? Is Christianity, maybe it's Christianity. Well, let's say it's Christianity. So then that's what you should be doing. Let's say it's Islam. That's what you should be doing. Let's say secularism. Let's say it's narcotics. So don't do that. Right? But you should be involved in whatever. But you got to figure it out. Judaism states it's Judaism. Right? I know it's crazy. Who would have thought? Maybe they're a little bit biased. But they state that it's Judaism. And therefore it comes along and tells you the fact that we have a national mission. But an individual mission, that means each one of us have to try to take a deep look into ourselves and see what is it that we're good at? What is it that we enjoy? What is it that we get the most out of? And then we got to test it out. Check. Does your light start becoming brighter? You will start to feel it. You will start feeling meaning and purpose. You'll feel it. And you know what? It's a constant evaluation, though. And we need to be checking ourselves before we reckon ourselves, right? We got to check on ourselves all the time to make sure that we're still in line. Because it could be at 25 you're supposed to be doing something, but at give me another age?
26.
Good. That's what I was looking for. At 26, you should be doing something different. Did you say 36?
20.
Good. In other words, when you built blocks when you were 3 years old, that wasn't wrong. That was right. But when you did heroin at 15, that was wrong. So in other words, what I'm pointing out, Sorry to call you out like that. But the idea is that when we go out and we look at these things, there's certain things we did that were part of the process that a 3-year-old is supposed to do, a 5-year-old is supposed to do, a 10-year-old is supposed to do, and there's certain things it's not supposed to do. And you look back, it's like, oh no, why did I waste my energies and my efforts and my time on that? This, my friends, is a very depressing class. Because it makes people, assuming, it could be nothing if we just walk out of here. But why it's depressing is it causes people to have to, if you want, to actually have to think a little bit and to realize, maybe I'm doing the wrong thing. Maybe I'm dating the wrong person. Maybe I'm in the wrong position of work. Maybe I'm in the wrong line of work. Maybe I'm in the wrong community. No. Nobody wants to rock the boat. The people all said, sit down. Sit down, you're rocking the boat. But at the end of the day, everybody wants to be happy. So it's a decision you got to make. Decision you got to make. Do you rock the boat and be happy, or do you continue and you live as they write that song, which is one of my favorite songs to sing, which is such a terrible song. This is a good life. Do you guys know that song?
Sing more of it.
I don't know the rest. A good, good life. I don't know the words, right? But it's like, this is a good life. Why is it this is a good life? Because people have settled. You should have been singing, this is a great life. And nobody sings that. Because they give up. And they say, let me settle for this level, which is maybe not real, I don't know. Versus, let's get reality. When a person hits reality, there's nothing more. Okay, let me get a quick recap and do the end of one point, then we're done. So we started going to be asking the very simple question everyone has been happy before, when you've been happy before. Stop and think for a second, what is it? I'll get all examples and give us a definition. What's the definition of happiness? Look at all the different things we said, right? Adjective, 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 adjective. No, but then actually give me one. Okay, very good. It could be, but it might be a level below. It might be the same one. I don't know. It depends what you mean. Right? Ultimately, this is when everything comes in line. It could be, well, I just know. When you get rid of all the negative, then you have the positive. It could be. I'm not sure. I've never felt that, but it could be that it's true. I said the natural state of man is happiness. Also, in case you live, a person is evil from his days. I'm not really sure how to take it. Okay, but at the end of the day, what we find is, what is happiness? I think we could all agree on this. Meaningful accomplishment. Meaningful accomplishment. But the question is, did you give the meaning, or is it inherently meaning? Right? So the idea is what? When a person does what they're supposed to be doing, when a person is in line with that, what they're supposed to be doing, you may be put on tefillin, maybe you did mitzvahs, maybe you kept the Torah. If you kept the Torah and you're not excited, that means you're missing the point. If you kept the Torah and you're not happy, that means you missed something. So that's okay, one time is enough. When a person goes, we got to think about it a little bit and see what are we supposed to be doing. Okay, so how does a person figure out? We got a national mission, right? If you choose to accept it, right? The mission is what? 5 seconds will blow up. First mission is the idea of national identity. The idea is called the Torah. The Torah is a national thing, but I don't feel it when I keep it out of aim. That's because you don't think it's true. But if you really did, then what? You can't stop this feeling. You'd feel Torah. It'd be amazing. You'd be connected to the highest of levels. Because the reason why God says, whenever there's obstacles, in which case you're going to be able to fight, because there's no fight, no choice, no life. But still, what happens when a person goes and removes it? I can see clearly now the rain is gone. Life is amazing. Then we have our individual mission. Our individual mission is what every one of us is something that we're supposed to be doing ourselves. We've got to look at how the person figured it out. Got to look at your toolbox. Everybody's toolbox. Look at what it is. Now, your toolbox can't interfere with the Torah. If in your toolbox you happen to have a sniper rifle, right, and you're very good at killing people, don't become a hitman. You understand? Because that goes against Torah. Maybe we join the Israeli army or something. But the idea is what? You got to figure out where things fall in line. Did we finish the mission? I don't know, right? It's all up to us whether we're going to do it or not. But this, my friends, everybody wants happiness. And we so often confuse our happiness for pleasure, and therefore we don't even look deep enough to be able to find out what it is. And if we start working this idea, God willing, none of these curses will happen, because we will serve. And not only will we serve with that utmost happiness, because the fact is we'll be in line completely, objectively. Any questions, comments, stories, jokes, attacks, please keep them verbal and non-physical. Awkward moment of silence. Okay, people, it's been a pleasure. See you when I see you. If I don't, then I won't take care, and bye-bye.